Carrow. I am an urban fantasy author and the operations director for Otherworld Inc. And I'm here to do a response video to Alexa Donne's video. Now, I'm not here to discuss Alexa's delivery or tone or defend her in any way because I really don't know her like that. And she's a grown-ass woman and she can go ahead and rebuttal any of the critiques that she gets to her, but there is some information from a publisher's side that I think is good to add to this conversation, and I was kind of motivated to make this video after watching Camille's video, and I'm going to go ahead and link both of those down below, and I would actually encourage you to think about these 5 points, and maybe if you want to make a response video as well, to go ahead and do that, or just to mull it over, but let's just go ahead and jump into it, right? So the first point about making profit off of your book, that is a very dependent variable. A lot of the individuals who are able to make profit when they launch the book already have an excessive marketing plan. They have been talking about this book forever, and you know, there's a big investment when it comes into launching a book. It's not just kind of like, hey guys, my book is out and in the world. A lot of the popular books that have been hitting like the bestseller list have a very extensive marketing team that is behind it, and there are some indie authors who are able to do that as well, and there are people who can do it independently. If you ever watch any of Jenna Marassi's videos, she is always in a constant state of a marketing plan in some shape or form. A lot of times when she's about to talk about a book release, she talks about it for 6+ months to build up hype and a fan base and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to launching your book and making a profit, it's a long-term investment. It's like buying land and sprucing it up and then reselling it later. And it doesn't really stop after you launch the book either. If you watch any of the other indie booktubers here, a lot of us basically, we're always promoting our works, right? We're always saying like, hey, my book is out, hey, if you want to check out my writing, because you always have to advocate for yourself. And a lot of the individuals who I notice that don't usually hit more than, I don't know, $100 after they launch their book, they don't really advocate for it. They're very shy, they're very hesitant, and some of them don't handle critiques very well, so of course they don't want to really mention the fact that they've got a book out. It's a lot of planning before, it's a big taboo when it happens, and it's a thing that you got to maintain afterwards. Can you make a profit after you launch your book? Yes, but it does require effort on your part. It's not just like publish and done. So just wanted to add that onto there. Alexa's second point about getting famous, I guess that really depends on what your definition of famous is. I'm constantly surprised that I have 500+ subscribers on YouTube. Like, I don't know how that happened. I appreciate you. Thank you for subscribing and listening to me. And then, you know, there's different kinds of famous. There's, you know, the night show famous, there's the YouTube famous, there's gamer famous. Like, it's a bunch of different things. But one thing that I will point out when it comes to getting famous is that people didn't just kind of like come out and be famous. Oftentimes they were seen before, they're seen during, and they're seen after. It's kind of like the launching the book thing. And more importantly, the people who do typically get famous have a couple different things that are going on. One, they're very charismatic, they are approachable, or they can stir up controversy. I don't really recommend that third one. A lot of new people can't always afford that, especially if you don't have the backing of a really big publisher to kind of tackle that public image. But being famous is, in this day and age, it's a little different from before, is having to do with the way that people see you, getting people to like you, and of course you've got to be likable and you've got to be relatable. That's kind of what people are looking for these days. So, I guess for that one, if you want to define what your idea of famous is, and then if you want to go ahead and break that down into how do you get from here to there, you can make it happen, but again, that's a thing that involves planning as well. I do kind of want to stress that there is a difference between visibility and being famous. Visibility is where you go and you try to be seen by other people, and famous is just where people can remember your face and your name, if that makes any sense. At least that's my definition of it. You can check me down below if you really want to. And the only reason I want to mention that is because I do know that there are some individuals that will basically hop from one stream to another because they're trying to get seen, but they're not famous, if that makes any sense. It's usually like when I hear other people in the background talk about that person, it's like, oh, it's that person, they're always jumping on streams and da-da-da-da-da, but that's all like they're known for. They're not known for their books, they're not known for their activities, and more importantly, people usually don't actually care what it is that they're doing, where with famous people actually have like a general interest in what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I just kind of wanted to point that out there, just because I've seen that it's a trend. Don't be visible, do try to be like acknowledged and known by other people. So number 3, I have very strong thoughts on, and it's mostly just because I work in the industry and I know a lot of stuff that I didn't really see other people touch on. So I'll go ahead and talk about that. A lot of individuals think that when they come out with their book that it's going to automatically get like a Hollywood deal. I do agree with Alexa that is an unrealistic expectation, mostly because Hollywood is run by a certain type of people and they want certain types of scripts and they want certain types of narratives. So unless you're writing for that group of people, you're not going to get the Hollywood deal. In that case, when it comes to write for your audience, you would have to ask yourself, who are the people who are in charge of Hollywood right now? What is it that they're wanting? How can I go ahead and fix all these elements into one story so that way they'll love it? That's really what they're looking for. And one other thing that I do want to point out that I don't really see a lot of people talk about, except over in the comic book side of things, is that Hollywood is looking at books and they're looking at comics as script factories. That's what they're looking at them for. And when they're looking at them for script factories, they're going to make sure it fits into like that save the cat beat thing, and it has those simple to hit arcs and all those points. That's really what they're going to be looking for. Now, occasionally Hollywood will reach out and grab like something that is obviously a bestseller that has a huge discussion that's around it. And once you notice that I'm saying the word discussion and not like popularity or things like that, because when you're looking at working with an IP and trying to promote it, you're trying to make sure that that IP has a lot of interest in it. So some of the good IPs to talk about would be Harry Potter and would also be Hunger Games, because those had lots of very, very long and lengthy discussions around them. For those of you who don't remember, when the first Harry Potter book came out, it didn't really hit off right away until America, very religious folks said you can't do that because it's got witches in it. And normally when you tell people you can't do something, what happens? Everybody goes and buys it. So that made it a talking point. So when you're looking again at thinking that you're going to get a Hollywood deal, you have to really take those things into account. Does your book meet the criteria that Hollywood is looking for? Does your book promote very lengthy discussions, not short-term discussions, and all that kind of stuff? And Hollywood is in a very interesting place right now, and I'm kind of curious to see where it's going to go. They're kind of struggling with keeping engagement right now just because of the way that the various industries that have been producing works have been reacting to the public, which has been very off-putting for some individuals. So I'm not too sure what's going to happen, especially with what's going on right now. There's a couple of industries that are honestly collapsing right now because they're either not producing works or products, or people are not able to actually go and get those things. So the next few months are going to be really interesting. Now, if you're looking to do something bigger with your works and you're looking to get exposure, my recommendation is to expand it in multiple medias. Get your audiobook out, maybe look at seeing if you can get it adapted into a graphic novel, things like that. Now, if you're an indie author, these are things that are going to obviously cost you money, but when we're talking about getting more notoriety and more exposure in that sense, you do have to have it available in multiple ways in order to get a bigger audience. So I could probably do a video on that if you guys are really interested, because that's a lot of what we do over at Other Worlds Inc. So if you're interested in having that topic expanded on, just leave a comment down below and I'd be happy to discuss that with you guys. Literary genius. I agree with a lot of different points that have been brought up with the literary genius thing. You can write something that is thought-provoking and that people are going to find insightful and they are going to connect with, but I don't think that the literary genius label is probably appropriate for that. In fact, literary genius label, I don't know, that really depends on a person and their perspective and what they consider that to be. And you're going to find that, I hate saying this, you're going to find with the more advanced readers or the people that have more expansive libraries that their idea of what a literary genius is going to be a little bit different. For example, I think that Stephen King is a literary genius. I really like his works and everything else, but I'm probably going to get a comment in here that says that Stephen King is not and that he's got a template and all this other stuff. And that's fine. And again, it goes back to perception. It goes back down to what people want and how they want it and things like that. Also keep in mind that with the amount of people that are writing right now, not only is, I don't want to say the bar high, but you have a lot of people to compete with for this title. And not all of them are alive either. Some of them have passed on and their works continue to live on beyond them. And a lot of the reasons that these works continue to live on, it kind of loops back to where I had talked about the discussion thing. Right? These are works that are going to promote discussion, it's going to get people to think, it's going to make them talk to each other. And that's what kind of makes a book immortal in that sense. It's what allows it to live longer than it actually, its shelf life might. So just some food for thought there. And I think that's the best way that I can say that. Overnight success, again, loops back to the first point, which has to do with making a book, getting profit, getting famous, all those things. You can possibly have overnight success, but again, this comes back to how are you marketing it, how long have you been marketing it, and what are you giving to other people in order to kind of entice them? Are you doing giveaways? Are you connecting with people? How many people do you have talking about your book? If you've watched any of my marketing videos here on YouTube, and if you haven't, that's fine. They're in the backlog. You can find them. But one of the things I usually say is that if you want some kind of success, you have to get people to talk about your book. Not ads all the time, not Facebook stuff, not any of that. Like, you have to get physical people to go and tell other people about your stuff. A lot of my sales last year actually happened at cons, and it wasn't because I was at the cons, but it was because one of my friends, who is a very avid cosplayer, would go to cons, and she does very amazing cosplay, by the way, and people would come and talk to her, and while she's standing in line to go and talk to other people, she would actually talk about my book. Like, super awesome lady, like, and then that's when I would notice that I'd get like spikes in sales because, you know, my book's available on Kindle. People would buy the Kindle and they would read it while they were at the con, and just stuff like that. You have to get people to talk about your book, and you can't have them talk about it on launch day. You have to have them help build up that hype. That's what street teams are for. So in a sense, everything that you are trying to do is a long-term game. You have to plan, you have to organize, and you have to be very strategic with how you're going to do this. You know, it comes down to breaking down who is your target audience, how do you reach your target audience, what does your target audience look like, what do they generally buy. You know, you really have to kind of dive really deep into that, because if you do want overnight success, it doesn't just like happen like that. You have to plan for it, you have to put some effort into it, and you have to stick with it even afterwards. Again, I like using other authors as examples where they always talk about their works. Stephen King, for example, his continued success is mostly because, first off, people like his works and they like everything that he does, but he's got a backlog in every one of these books. And so somebody who's never heard of Stephen King before is going to pick up a book, they'll open it, and it's going to say other works by Stephen King in there. And same thing for all these other wonderful people that are over here on this other shelf. Like, that's just how it works. Who's another indie author I can use as an example? Okay, so here's 3 different indie authors. I don't know them all personally except for this one right here, but they all have a very different marketing plan. So we have Vivian Reese. We all know Vivian Reese, right? She's our very charming lady next door who is also doing writing coach stuff. And when she wrote this book, she was talking about it for years, right? She was talking about it for years. She was talking about how, you know, her pros and her cons about writing it. She was talking about her development. She talked about lessons that she learned. She literally shared the entire journey over years with everybody before this book came out. And then, obviously, it came out, and I can't tell you what her sales were, but I guarantee that it was probably better than, you know, most typical indie authors who don't have a fan base or anything like that. This took a long time. And then we have Tiffany Donne. For those of you who don't know, Tiffany Donne and I were... Well, I was almost published with 8 Little Pages, and then I walked. But she was published with 8 Little Pages. That's why I've got that little logo right there. It happened. Okay, I have evidence. And Tiffany Donne's audience is actually, she promotes her stuff on Facebook. She promotes it mostly on Wattpad. And she's got a huge audience on Wattpad. So that, because she knows that that's where her audience is and that's where she can talk to them, that's where you can normally find her advocating for her stuff at. And she does all the other stuff on like the other media platforms, but the Wattpad is definitely where her people are, and that's where she goes and advocates for it. And she keeps in regular contact with them and everything. Now, my friend Richard, love Richard. Richard's a good person. Richard owns his own indie publishing company, and he's got his book available in lots of different places, but Richard doesn't really promote his stuff very well. He doesn't. But one of the things that he does is he goes to different writing groups and he basically talks about his book there, but not in a buy my book kind of way. But he says, yeah, I have a book out. And normally if you're like me and you're curious about who these people are, you'll go and you'll buy their works. That's why I bought this book. Same thing with my other indie author friend, Emmy Brines. Emmy Brines is a very funny person. Donuts of Doom, I would really recommend it. But Emmy Brines does not advocate for his stuff like at all. Like, he doesn't do any advertisements. He doesn't talk on social media at all. So his earnings mostly come from the fact that he's just got like lots of different stuff that's out there. And he's been doing this for about 20 years right now. He's been writing and publishing. A lot of it's been self-published. He's gotten some stuff that is traditionally published, and so he gets a check occasionally from those publishers. But but these are all different levels of success. You know, you have the individual who doesn't do much. You have the individual, well, you have two individuals that don't do much. You have one person that does connect to their audience and they go out and then find them. And then you've got the one person who goes and builds up their fan base and does the promotional for like years, literal years. And we can kind of use my book as an example. This is the relaunch, but when I first came out with the original version of this book last August, I had been talking about it for about 7 months. I really should have been doing it for longer, but I didn't really find out that I didn't really get the okay from 8 Little Pages when I was with them to really talk about anything until the February. So that kind of like tightened up my thing, but they were trying to market it on their stuff as well. So there's that going on for it. And I should have honestly marketed the relaunch a lot more than I did, but I can't really explain why I didn't. It may have had to do with all the stuff that's going on right now, and I just felt very strange trying to promote my book at a time like this. But again, I didn't just write the book and I didn't just come out with it. I did talk about it for a couple of months, and my sales for that launch day were actually pretty good. I don't mind sharing them with you. I sold 60 Kindle copies and 30 physical copies. And considering that nobody knew who I was and my marketing was really mostly just me and some stuff on Instagram, that's pretty good. So I'm pretty happy with how it all went down, and I'm still really happy that the book is back out there and doing its thing in the world. I've met some really nice people who've read my works, and I really actually value that a lot more than anything else. I really like it when somebody reads it and then they're kind of like, hey, I read your book and I really like it. I'm like, wow, you're like the most amazing person to me right now. Can we be friends? So these 5 points that Alexa makes are right, and they can be wrong, and it really comes down to you and how you decide to tackle all of these things. Like I said, if you are looking to plan ahead and do some advanced promoting, and you basically are reaching out to your community and to your target audience and being relatable and approachable, you are going to find that you are going to get a lot more sales than you would if you were the reverse. I've said this before, I'll say it again, people really don't want to buy books from assholes. So when you are out there talking about your books or your writing advice, just make sure that you are kind of aware of your tone and your approach that when you are doing these topics, because that is going to not always jive with other people. And keep in mind that it really comes down to how much effort that you want to put into this. Earlier I said that this is kind of like investing in land. It's a really good metaphor for what we're talking about right now, because the thing that you do, the more effort that you put into it and the more that you build it up, is going to yield you better results. Now, one thing that I do want to kind of add to this is if you are going to go with a traditional publisher or a indie publisher, is that they are going to push what we refer to as outbound marketing onto you. So earlier when I was basically saying, hey, who's your target audience, where you find them and all that other stuff, they want you to know that when you come in, and then they want you to be active in helping to make that audience happen. It's a little, not everybody's very comfortable with that, but you have to really consider, if you are not willing to promote and sell your book, why would the people that are publishing be willing to do it for you either? They have a limited budget on what they can do. They have multiple works that they are trying to promote. So in all honesty, you can't always count on them to do like the bestseller promoting stuff. So you really have to just, you need to have your own marketing plan and know how you want to move forward, and don't sit there and tell yourself, well, they're going to take care of that for me, because a lot of times that's honestly not going to happen. Now, the second thing I think I do want to mention when it comes to trying to be famous, and I probably should have mentioned this when I was talking about being famous, but it just came to me now, is that a lot of individuals who do have a really big following have a couple of things that are going on. One, they have a lot of content that people can gobble up, whether it be blog posts, it be YouTube channels, or they actually have multiple written works out. A lot of times with the written works, you have to have 5 or more out to get your name pushed around in reading communities, and also to have some kind of stable income. May not be like paying the mortgage kind of income, but it's definitely some coins that are trickling your way. And unfortunately in self-publishing, a lot of individuals who do make very steady income have 10 plus books out. Now, whether that pays the mortgage or not, I can't really tell you that either. I can tell you for some people it does, for some of them it doesn't. It really depends on the content that you're pushing out and if there's a demand for it too. You also have to consider if you're making what's referred to as evergreen content, stuff that people are always going to want, versus the stuff that's kind of like the hot thing right now. And there's a big lengthy discussion I could have about that, but we're not talking about that today. Anyway, those are my thoughts on those 5 points. Obviously, like I said, there is some I don't want to say that there's exceptions, but there are things that you can do to make those things happen if you want them to happen. I don't really recommend the third one about Hollywood just because of the state that it's in right now, but that is my personal opinion, and you are more than welcome to go ahead and rebuttal that or share your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. Leave that down below in the comments. I love having these discussions with you guys and hearing what you have to say on pretty much anything that involves these topics. But I'm going to go ahead and end that today, and I hope you all have a really good day. I'm just kidding. Alexa, if you're watching this really is not a personal attack on you or your expertise or anything like that. This was really just me seeing this topic and feeling that I had things to share about it too, so please don't take it the wrong way. I heart you, okay?